All right, well, we can get started while people still come in. So welcome everyone. Thank you for logging on and attending this morning's program. My name is Matt Schumann. I am on the programming team here at Cary Library. Before we begin, just a few things to note. Please let me know in the chat if you have any technical issues. I can try to resolve them for you. And if you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A button and we will address them at the end. This program was made possible by the generous donors to the Cary Library Foundation. I'd like to now introduce Chef Trisha Pérez Kennealy. She is the owner of the Inn at Hastings Park, a Lexington landmark, and she has been creating videos for their Instagram as well as hosting our cooking series on top of a busy schedule running the inn. We are grateful for her taking time out of her busy day to teach us how to cook, and today will be on fish. So please welcome Chef Trisha.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back with all of you. It's hard to believe that it is August. The year, especially the summer, has gone by really, really fast. So I hope that people are getting to enjoy time with family and friends. And one of the things that we like to do in the summer is really enjoy the bounty of the sea here in New England. So today I'm going to be, although the salmon probably came from further afar, I'm going to use the salmon as the protein to teach you some basic ideas about some sauces that you could use with fish. And then I'm also going to make one of my favorite things, which is a lobster roll. So I have a piece of salmon here. We bring in whole, like the whole fish, and we fillet it here in-house. And what I want to show people is sort of the difference. This is, usually the top side of what you get. But then you have the bottom portion of that, which has been skinned. And there's that little bit, that brown, sort of like that fat layer between the skin and the salmon. I actually like to have my fish, especially salmon, with skin on, because I like the crispiness of it. But what you want to do is I season the fish. I use camp mix, which I use a lot. That combination of salt, pepper, garlic, it just kind of had everything in it. But you can also do some nice, coarse kosher salt, some fresh grinds of pepper, and that'll give you the same effect. I have a pan here. I have it on a low heat because I'm going to cook the salmon simultaneously to making our sauce. What I'll do after I do the sauces, I'll talk you through what I would do if I was really going to cook the fish to temperature. I have a little bit of olive oil in my frying pan, as you can see right here, just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that salmon in skin side down. And I'm actually using the salmon, I'm kind of using the salmon to spread the oil a little bit in the pan. The beautiful thing about salmon is that it does have all of that wonderful, those omega-3s. It's a fatty fish, so it makes it very forgiving when it's cooking. So I think it's a great fish to cook in a frying pan. It's fantastic on the grill. It's probably one of the easiest and most versatile types of fish that you could cook and have in your repertoire. So like many of you, this summer of our rainy season, our garden in the back of the inn is overgrowing. The hydrangea that are at the front of the inn, I've never seen them look so large. We kind of have to go out and sort of hit them with a broom to get the water out because they kind of are doing a little bit of a droop because there's so much water, but they look spectacular. And that's sort of the same thing for the herbs in our garden. I know it's been a little harder for some of the other vegetables. Some of our local farmers are seeing a little bit of delay. Some of them had stuff that was washed out, but we're going to make the most of what we have. And what I have is some really beautiful chives from our garden. And I think chives are one of those flavors that just go so well with shellfish and with different types of seafood. So we're going to be using a lot of that. But what I'm going to start off with actually is one of my favorite. I love shallots. I think they have a distinct flavor that's different from an onion. I think it's a little milder. And again, I think it's a flavor that works fantastically with fish. So what I'm doing is I'm going to peel and cut this shallot, and we're going to use it as the basis of our sauce. And the sauce that I'm making is a beurre blanc. And beurre blanc is traditionally made with the shallots. You can use different types of vinegar. I'm going to use a mixture of wine vinegar and champagne vinegar. And what I'm going to do once I cut this shallot up is it's going to be a fine dice. I'm going to saute it in butter until it gets soft. And so I'm cutting out my shallot, and I have some butter that I have reserved here. And I have the pan on a medium-low heat. And I'm also melting about a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half of butter in that pan. And I'll show you. There. I'm going to put some of those shallots in to get it started. So one of the things about all of the different types of fish in the world, I think one of the big things in fishing right now is making sure that you are using fish that are sustainable. Especially in this part of the world, we've gotten much better, but there was a time when we were really overfishing, and it really put some of those favorite species in danger. So if you are a big fish eater, I highly recommend that you bookmark Monterey. The aquarium in Monterey has a wonderful, wonderful list of products, and it talks about the sustainability and the environmental practices that are used in terms of catching and farm fishery. Farm fishery, it's important, it's a wonderful option, but you do want to make sure when you are buying farm-raised fish that you're buying it from a reputable fish farm. Unfortunately, some of the fish farms do not take care of their fish stock the way they should. There can be high levels of contaminants in the water if they're not taken care of properly. So it really pays to do your research as if you were doing research about a farm that you were buying your meat from or your chickens from. You really do want to approach it the same way when you're talking about fish. What's incredible is that there's now a variety of companies that you can buy fish online and have it delivered to you. So the fish is being flash frozen at the point where it's being caught, and then it's being shipped all over the country. As I said, we're really lucky to live in, I sometimes think that we forget that this is a maritime region, right? New England, our legacy is tied to the ocean. And so there's some wonderful, there's some Captain Martins, Foley's, Wolf's. There's some wonderful fishmongers in the area, but then there's also some independent fishmongers like Sven, the fish guy. He delivers right to your house, which is absolutely incredible. There's wonderful fish CSAs. So I really encourage you to find out more about some of those options and figure out sort of the fish plan that works for your family. Because adding fish and having it 2 or 3 times a week is a great way to increase your health. It's a fantastic source of protein, and all of the different vitamins and minerals that you're getting from the fish really do provide some significant health benefits. So I have my shallots. They're softening. I'm going to bring my camera over here and show you a little bit. So I have my shallots. They're melted in the melted butter. I'm going to just put up the heat a little bit, but if I were doing this on a home oven, I would probably keep it at a medium-low heat. I have my salmon over here. As you can see, it's seasoned. And what I like to do with my salmon and any of the fish that I'm cooking in a pan, I love these silicone brushes. And what I like to do is sort of use that brush to just kind of keep basting the salmon. If I were to flip this fish on its side, or I'm going to just come from that angle, you'll see that it's cooking up that side. I like my salmon medium rare. I know that some people, that's not their taste, but it's really quite nice. It's nice and soft and just really juicy to me. So that's the way that I like to eat it. So what we're going to do is we're taking, in terms of the beurre blanc, I'm going to walk you through the method. So we're going to saute the shallots in a little bit of butter. And once they're soft, what we're going to do is we're going to add the vinegar. You have to be very careful when you add vinegar to a hot pan, because the vinegar, it will reach its evaporation point and it will turn into steam. You do not want to stand right over your pan when you are doing that, because if you can, you run the risk of irritating your nasal passages, because it's pretty pungent. It can actually, really kind of irritate those nasal passages. So what I'm doing is I have my shallots, they're getting softer, and I'm going to show you what I mean. I purposely kind of jacked up the heat on this, and I'm going to add the vinegar so that you can see what I'm talking about in terms of it flaming up. Oops. It didn't do it as much, but I'm going to bring that right up. And if you were here, you can see the steam coming off here. Like that is it's a very, very pungent smell. So I added about 1/4 cup of vinegar, and I'm going to keep the camera on that while it goes, because what we're looking for is all of that vinegar to evaporate. And what it does is it kind of creates a syrup, and it intensifies the flavor that's going to be the base for our beurre blanc sauce. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe the smell. It's like this really beautiful combination of the shallot and a little bit of the sweetness, because I'm using a champagne vinegar. So that note seems to be coming out. And what I'm going to do now is I have some butter that I'm going to use about a 1/2 stick of butter. Actually, for this, I'll probably use, if I were doing this for, 6 or 8 people, I would use about a stick of butter. And I think some of you have heard me say that sometimes in American cooking, we're really afraid of using fat. But the reality is if you put a stick of butter in a dish that's serving 8 people, everyone's getting their serving size of butter. So I think it's always important to take a look at those recipes and really, don't be afraid of using the butter. Don't be afraid of using the seasoning, because you don't want to alter the taste of the dish. All right. So I'm going to just get the butter ready. I'm cutting it into squares, which I will show you. And once I'm going to let that vinegar evaporate off a little bit, I'm going to start adding that butter slowly. So I'm cutting it into little cubes. See it right here. So that's what I meant when I said that I had the little cubes. And I'm going to start adding a little bit of butter. And the reason why I'm adding it a little bit at a time is that I want it to kind of blend in. And if I were to add all of the butter at once, it would separate out and you would begin to see the fat. So see the creaminess of what's beginning to happen? I'm going to add a little bit more. So what I like about this recipe is that it is versatile. You can mix and match the type of vinegar you like to use. If I wanted to do a little bit more of an Asian-inspired dish, I might add a little bit of ginger and use rice vinegar instead of using the champagne vinegar and the shallot. And you can you see how it's tracking in the pan? You can see a little bit of that. I'm just going to lower it a little bit.
There was a question, Trisha. It's just relevant to right now, but what temperature are you cooking the salmon at?
The salmon is cooking at a low heat right now because I want it to be timed with my sauce. If I were cooking it, just to get it out, and I would probably be doing it on a medium high heat. So when I talk about a medium high heat, if you think about the knob on your or the levels, it would be 3/4 of the way, right? So if I had a knob and the top were 12 o'clock, I would be taking it to 9 o'clock. Does that make sense? Because sometimes I find that people are often question like, well, what do you mean when you say that it's medium high heat? So
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I'm going to cook that a little bit more. And while it's finishing off and I'm stirring it, I'm just going to chop up a few of these chives, because I want to add a little bit of greenness to a little bit of green to the sauce. The other thing that I could do is another flavor that I really like with a fish is tarragon. I think that also works really well. So I have my chives ready to go. A nice little dice. I'll show you what I mean by that. So there's my chives that I just picked about 40 minutes ago from our garden in the back. But you could use a little bit of tarragon. As I said, I think that works really well. So in this container here, I have a little bit of cream, and I'm going to add about a tablespoon of cream to my sauce. And of course, if you wanted it to be a little bit thicker, you could add a little bit more. All right, so I want to show you what that looks like. Okay. Now I'm going to add my chives to it, which adds a really nice color. I'm going to get my plate ready to serve it. Okay. Now, I personally would be comfortable eating my salmon if it looked like that, because as I said, I'm comfortable with the medium rare. But what I'm going to do is I am going to gently turn the salmon. Hold on one second. I don't have 3 hands today. And thankfully, we're very busy at the end, so we don't have a lot of extra hands right now. Oh, look at that. So I turned it over. So see, we have that beautiful caramelization that if that were the skin, as I said, that's like one of my favorite parts. I just flipped it over really easily using the contour of the pan to help me do that. And now I'm going to flip it right out onto my plate. And I'm going to sauce it. And I'll show you the picture of me saucing the fish. So see the bright greenness from the chive, how that adds really nice color to it. So I needed to make that amount of sauce to be able to demonstrate for you. But if this were an individual dish, I probably would have done like 1/4 of that sauce. But for demonstration purposes, we're prone to excess. So there's that finished dish. And I like to serve the beurre blanc sauce, the beurre blanc in, that was a very Bostonian way of saying beurre blanc. I like to serve the beurre blanc often in a bowl, or this has a little bit of a dip in it. And I love to put like roasted Brussels sprouts or green beans. You know, right now there's so many beautiful squashes. So you could do like a sauteed squash and sort of serve it around. It also tastes phenomenal. If you were to dip bread in it, it tastes fantastic. So just to recap, you start off, you saute the shallots in butter, you add the vinegar of your choice, about 1/4 of a cup, you reduce it to it's almost like a syrupy consistency, then you add your butter a little bit at a time, and then you finish the sauce off with cream. And then if you'd like to add green, you could add tarragon, you could add chives, you could add, you know, any of those that sort of brighten up and add that really nice color and brightness to the dish. So the next thing that I want to talk about is lobster. The Kennealys spend a lot of time up in Maine, and we love our lobster. And so one of the things that's on our menu right now at the inn is we're serving lobster rolls. And the lobster rolls can be eaten one of two ways. Here in Massachusetts, we predominantly think that the lobster roll is tossed with mayonnaise, but in Maine, they actually do a hot lobster roll. So they do a quick saute of the lobster and a little bit of butter. And of course, they're both served in a overly abundant or overly buttered roll. It's that New England style Frankfurter roll is really the traditional one. So what we're doing right now with our cold lobster roll here at the inn is that we have made a mayonnaise, like a lemon mayonnaise. And if you look, you'll see the brightness of it. And if you see the little flecks, the flecks are actually the zest, it's lemon zest. And so it's really important when you're making lemon zest that you don't go into the pit. And what I mean by that is the outer part is the zest, and the white on any of the citrus fruit, whether it be a lemon, an orange, a grapefruit, that's the pit. And the pit can actually be quite bitter. So it is worth it to either have a very sharp paring knife when you're taking off the zest, or even investing in one of the little zesters or a microfilm grater, so that you really are making sure that you're getting that citrus essence when you're making your butter. So we mix the mayonnaise with the lemon zest, some salt and pepper. And then what we do is we actually have, and this is also really good if you want to have lobster rolls, if you're having a group of people over or you're making like with your family. What I will do is I will admit, I will buy lobsters steamed. I will buy them already steamed. It's just easier. And so I buy they're getting the bar ready for lunch. I will buy them steamed and then I will take them home and I will break them down. So I just find it a lot easier. It's very easy for me to break down lobsters. I break off the tail, I break off the claws. I'm very facile knowing how to break it down. And then I will serve my guests, if we're doing just straight lobster, I'll put the tails in one bowl, I'll put all the knuckles and claws in another, so that people can just enjoy and not worry about making a mess of themselves when they're eating the lobster. If I'm making a lobster roll, I will have some of the hot ones and I'll do the mayonnaise. This is one mayonnaise that you can make. You could also make with lemon and garlic, but I really do like to let the lobster do the talking because it's such a beautiful product. So what we found here is that we really like the combination of the lemon. So it was really adds a little bit of brightness to it. In the meat that we're using, I like to use a combination. As I said, there is a different texture and flavor, I think, to the tails and the claws. And so you sort of need to, I would encourage people to sort of, next time you have a lobster, if you're a lobster eater, really take the time to sort of try them separately instead of just kind of going through and enjoying, the lobster. So what we do is we just mix with this healthy dose of lemon mayonnaise. I'm also going to add a little bit of chive to it because I like there to be and this is also one of the secrets. I have a fishmonger that I go to in Maine, and I try to stay in close touch with them about when they're seeing that the lobsters are molting, because that's a wonderful time, I think, to eat lobster because it's so much easier to crack the shell. Like you could just squeeze it with your hand and the shell comes right off. So I'm just going to put this in a bowl so everyone can see what it looks like. The other thing too is obviously who doesn't like a roll with their lobster, but sometimes I just like to make lobster salad and serve it like that on a bed of greens. So that's our lobster. You can see the beautiful lemon zest, you can see the zest, and you also can see the chive as well. So that is my presentation of salmon with versatile blanc sauce and lobster rolls. The other thing that I had talked about, some people had asked me, and I posted this on my Instagram, about oysters, because there is a whole, we're often told that you should only eat oysters in months that have the letter R in them. And the reason that sort of came about is that it all has to do with the temperature of the water. Because the oysters, as the water begins to get warmer, they begin to spawn and the taste will begin to change. But what's really important, especially here in Massachusetts, we are so lucky to have some of the best oyster farmers in the country. And what they do now is they're able to raise and lower the beds so that they can get the oysters down to that optimal temperature. So whereas that might have applied when people were going and harvesting oysters or going shelling for them when there wasn't oyster farming, it's a little bit different now. And obviously you want to make sure that you're buying your oysters from a reputable oyster farm. But as I said, we are so lucky. Duxbury down in the Cape, down in Rhode Island, there's some really beautiful things happening with that type of farming. So that was my presentation for today. I'm happy to answer any questions about fish, other suggestions, or if people are looking for other suggestions, providing other suggestions about what people might be able to do as we celebrate the bounty of the sea in our short-lived summers here in New England.
A few questions have come in so far, but feel free to use the Q&A button. Someone was asking if you can use scallions if chives are not available.
Of course, scallions and chives, you know, I think I would definitely use scallions. And if you were doing that Asian, like if you wanted to have that Asian flavor, if you were to use the rice vinegar, adding ginger and scallions would be fabulous. So that would work really well with a piece of salmon. It would work really nicely with halibut as well. So I think it's really those, like the chives, the onions, the scallion, the shallot, they're all in that family. The other thing that's readily available right now and is quite delicious, I think that Wilson's has it. I know that Codman Farm, they're beginning to have it. I think Drumlin, they have these, they're like spring, summer onions. They're delicious. So those would also work really well too.
Someone said great explanation about the lobster rolls, but was there lemon juice in the mayo or just zest?
Just zest. Hold on one second. Marie. So yes, there wasn't a lot of lemon juice in it. You can add lemon juice to it. The other thing too, if you haven't tried to do it, and there's some great recipes for it, it is actually incredibly easy if you have a food processor or a blender, a high-speed blender, to make your own mayonnaise. And if you haven't had the opportunity, I was thinking I should have done that. That would have been a great demonstration. Maybe I'll do that later. It really is an emulsion that you're mixing the oil, the olive oil, with really beautiful eggs. And if you have the opportunity to get some farm fresh eggs, which you can here in Lexington, either, I think that Meadow Mist may be selling their eggs again, or you can go to Codman. It's spectacular. So there's a fabulous recipe. It depends on which edition of The Joy of Cooking, but maybe what I'll do is I'll include a recipe for the mayonnaise, because it really is something to behold. It's not something that you do every day. And I know that some people are a little bit concerned about eating raw egg yolk, but if you're healthy enough to eat the raw egg yolk, it's one of those things that it's worth it once in a lifetime in your cooking repertoire to make homemade mayonnaise.
This is kind of tied in, but if you didn't want to make your own mayonnaise, what kind of mayonnaise would you use if you had a recommendation?
Like Julia Child, I love Hellmann's mayonnaise, and they've actually come out with a variety of products. Like they have their olive oil one, they have an avocado one, and I might be, actually I can say that it was true before that. I have a young woman who worked for me for 3 years, a wonderful woman named Alexa. And she, after she left us, she went to business school at Cornell, and then she ended up working for Unilever, and Unilever owns Hellmann's. So she was working on some of the new variations. I think it's a great product. So I'm a Hellmann's girl. It's really interesting because in different parts of the country, I don't know how many of you, if you remember Miracle Whip, like in other parts of the country, they think that Miracle Whip is mayonnaise, and it's not. So there's some other, what is it? Kensington's is also another really good brand. The one thing that you need to be careful of, and we're becoming a little bit more attuned to this, My son has developed some food sensitivities, and we actually think that he's sensitive to xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is a thickener. And if you've never looked at ingredient labels, take a minute and look, and you will be astounded. It is in everything. It is in hot sauces. It's in certain brands. I just need one. Certain brands of cream cheese. It's actually kind of alarming. And thank you. And if you're eating a gluten-free diet, it's also used as a thickener in a lot of those things. And if you at all suffer from migraines or any sort of headaches, and you can't seem to figure it out, you may want to try eliminating xanthan gum from your diet. It was absolutely astounding to me. It's an ice cream. And the other scary part about the product is xanthan gum is also used as wallpaper paste. So things that I'm learning, even as a chef, as I go along, why would we be eating something that's used as wallpaper paste?
Do you tend to saute rather than bake fish? Someone asks.
It all depends. I cook fish like 5 different ways. Today I demonstrated in the pan. Super easy to do that with the fresh fish. I love grilling my fish. Often what I would do is make a packet with salmon. What I like to do is I pick different seasonings. I have a potlatch seasoning that I particularly like that has from the Pacific Northwest. It has a bit of heat in it, a little bit of chili powder. And what I do is I put the rub on the fish. I slice lemons, and then I take the butter and I cut it into really little cubes. So I put the rub on the fish, then I put one of those little cubes of butter, then I put a lemon circle on it, and I wrap it in aluminum foil. So I make each person their own little packet, and I cook it on indirect heat in the grill I try to get the grill to about 400 degrees, and I cook the packets on indirect heat. And what I mean by that is I put the fish on the grill, but it's not over one of the flames. So I have the outer burners on to achieve that 400 degrees temperature, but then I just leave the one in the middle. So I grill, I bake it in the oven, I broil, I saute. So it depends on how much time I have, and also the type of fish. So I'm not sure if that's a great answer. You kind of need to practice with it, and you need to figure out what works best for you in terms of timing and other things.
Would you suggest a technique for salmon with blackened or spicy seasoning? You kind of touched on it, but
so yeah. So you could do the same thing with the blackened seasoning. If you like that blackened flavor, I would highly recommend that you try the potlatch seasoning. It's really delicious. And of course, too, remember that a lot, salmon, Pacific Northwest. So I sort of feel, the potlatch seasoning, my understanding of the origin of potlatch is that it was some of the Native Americans who actually came up with that spice blend. So it stands to reason that it would go really well because it's kind of based on their traditions, and they're in close proximity to the source of that fish that's coming from the salmon that's coming from the Pacific Northwest.
And then the same person just asked, would you blacken both sides of the salmon?
I would not. So I tend to try to cook the fish on one side. If you're doing it on the grill, there really is no need to flip that fish. And for the most part, you really can get that fish to cook through. I think that blackening on both sides could be a little bit, it could be a little bit overwhelming. I think if you get that nice blackened seasoning on one side, I think that you're good to go. But of course, that's a matter of preference.
And the last question here is, how long will homemade mayonnaise last if refrigerated?
If refrigerated, I probably wouldn't keep it more than 2 or 3 days, to be honest with you. And one of those things that if you're going to make it for a special occasion, make a quantity that you know that you're going to consume rapidly.
Which is interesting, given that the Hellmann's lasts for months.
Yes, the Hellmann's, but remember too, like that, those are pasteurized egg yolks, right? Yeah. So what they've done is, they know how to make those products stable.
Yeah. Well, Thank you, Trisha, for this wonderful demonstration. I wish it was lunchtime right now because I'm quite hungry after watching that. But
Yeah, you can just run on down. You're about to go 500 yards in that direction because it looks like you're back in the office. So if you want to come on down and I'll give you some lobster and some salmon.
but thank you everyone for coming. Trisha, did you have any last words you'd like to say?
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate, we definitely noticed that there's more people coming to dine. I just want to remind people that we do have outdoor dining space. And actually, given the current situation, I think that we are going to open up our back garden for more general seating as well. So if you're looking for a place to eat and you feel more comfortable being outside, we're more than happy to accommodate that. I also wanted to add that even in our dining room, we are still sort of, even though we're not required to by law, we're kind of keeping those tables at more of a distance than we might have traditionally. So if you want to come to dinner, we really would welcome that opportunity to have you here as our guest. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns about what we're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or any of the members of our team. We really, we're doing everything that we can to keep our staff safe, to keep our guests safe. But it's also really important for us to try as much as we can to resume our normal activities so that we can support the businesses here in Lexington.